Hi, everybody. We'll wait another minute to see who shows up. Hey, Josh. Good to see you. Hi, Lloyd. You're waving away. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Erica. Oh, Erica.
Hi,
Oh,
Eugene.
hi. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Uh, I like A Cash. That's great. Hi. Wow. Wow. Somebody's getting big.
Absolutely.
I'm going to mute you, Erica, because you have a kid. Hey, Lynn. He just moved around on my screen. Hey, Dan. Hi. It's nice when it's small, like I can say hi to everybody. Hi, Mark. Gary. Hi, Gary. You have a pretty. You're living in a beautiful place somewhere. I have to know about A Cash. Come on, are we cousins or something, or is that?
Dad?
Pardon? Oh,
Dad?
it's A Cash. I'm not even. It's only my daughter. I don't recognize her at
Yeah,
all.
apparently.
I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm like,
I thought you were joking.
I wish I was. That's so funny. I'm not used to you being on here. Where are you?
We can talk after your talk, Dad.
Oh,
We can do
okay.
this
Okay.
later.
Okay, we can talk later. Good. I'm happy to talk to you later. Uh, okay, I think that's good enough to start. And good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Eugene Cash. This is San Francisco Insight in our Sunday evening practice. We'll sit for half an hour, and there'll be a half hour or so talk, and then we'll have time for a discussion about the talk. Please find a posture that's comfortable. You can sit upright, where you feel both uprightness, letting the back be upright from the base of the spine all the way through the back of the neck, so that you're mostly sitting on your sits bones. And then just in a very relaxed way, become aware of your body sitting here. Just feel your body, however it is. You don't have to change anything or fix anything. It may be comfortable or uncomfortable, it may be warm or cool. If there's any obvious place you can relax, let it relax. But if there's a place that's tight and you can't relax it, then relax around it. And as you feel your body sitting here, notice that your body is breathing. And it's very skillful to spend some time being mindful of the body and the breathing to center ourselves in the present moment. Because the body is alive right now, and you can be mindful of that aliveness. And the breath is part of that, the manifestation of the aliveness that's here. And so letting all the thoughts or feelings or ideas or other things that are happening be in the background. And just feel your body sitting here breathing. And some of us are often aware of the breath at the nostrils. Some of us are aware of the expansion and then relaxation of the torso with each breath. Some of us are just mindful of the whole body as it breathes. And in a very relaxed but definite way, let the breath and body, the body and its breathing be in the foreground. And you don't have to stop the thoughts or the feelings or anything else, but let them be in the background. And you can play with the meditation by seeing how intimate you can be with one breath, staying very aware, very close, feeling, sensing, knowing directly the full in-breath and then the complete out-breath, no matter how long or short they are. We're not trying to change the breath. We just want to be close to it, aware of it, observe it, know it experientially. And as the consciousness starts to become centered here in the present moment experience, you have an option. You can stay with the body and the breath actually for the whole meditation, just in a very relaxed way, staying present with each inhale, with each exhale. Or if you feel more settled, if you feel settled enough, you can be aware of everything, opening up the space of awareness to include being mindful of thoughts and feelings and sounds and other sensations in the body, or smells, or whatever it may appear in this moment. It doesn't mean getting involved with the thoughts or enchanted by our thoughts or our feelings, but being aware of them. Just like we can be aware of the breath, we can also be aware that we're thinking, even when we're not even trying to think. Even if we don't want to think, thoughts happen, and we can be aware of it and not just identified with the thought. If you're having lots of thoughts, you can just be mindful of thinking instead of getting attached to them or having to believe them. Just see that the thoughts are happening all on their own. And of course, it's the same with feelings. We may have some feeling of joy or delight or irritation or sadness or fear or wonder or excitement. And we can just be mindful of them as they happen on their own. And of course, whatever is happening, we may have a reaction to it. We might like it or not like it, or want it or not want it, or think it's the right thing or the wrong thing. And we want to be aware of that instead of just believing it. So that we can start to rest or relax into the space of awareness that's always here for having any experience. And it's very helpful, whatever you're doing, if you're staying with the body and the breathing, or if you're being aware of whatever is arising in this moment, to relax. Even relax with being unrelaxed. If you're feeling tense or tight, relax around it. Be aware of the tightness itself. Staying very present, very aware, very awake, moment by moment by moment, to these moments of life that are happening right now and will continue in each moment. If you discover that you become mesmerized by some thought or story or to-do list, and you forgot to be aware that you were thinking about it, relax. Be very kind to oneself as we meditate. And always begin again now, this moment being brand new and starting again fully right now to be here and be aware. We'll end the formal meditation by offering our good wishes, offering the blessing or the benefit of our meditation to go out to the people in the Ukraine and Russia who are at war. May they be safe and protected and free from harm. May they awaken and be free from war. We're sending our heart's wishes for their well-being. And we have a few messages before the talk, few announcements. Two things. I won't be here the next 2 weeks. Next week is Ty Powers, who's a good friend. He was a CDL student at Spirit Rock and teaches around the world, often with his partner, Sarah, who's a yoga teacher, and they teach yoga and meditation retreats together. And so Ty will be here. I don't think he's ever taught here before. I've been really trying to get him, and he agreed to come next week. And please check it out, check him out and see how he does, how he is. And then the following week, Pam Weiss will be here, and then I'll be here again 3 weeks from now. And I think Paul has the other announcement.
So hello, my name is Paul Irving. I'm one of your board members, and I wanted to talk a little bit about giving and generosity this evening. So first, as I think many of you know, we are the inheritors of this amazing tradition of kind of a cycle of generosity in which the community offers support to the teachers, traditionally the monks and nuns. And as part of that cycle of generosity, the monks and the nuns allow their practice to go outward to teach and to be with the people. And that's the tradition that we inherit and that we practice here at San Francisco Insight. And so if you would like to participate in that, we would very much invite that. And in a moment, I'll put a link in the chat for that. But I also wanted to just talk a little bit about generosity, because for me, it has been such an enormous part, perhaps even the center of my practice. As Eugene talked today and gave us instruction, again and again, he talked about relaxing. And that's so much a part of what our meditation experience is and our practice in meditation. And likewise for me, and I'm curious to know, excuse me, I'm curious to know if this is true for you as well. That is, we open our hearts and relax, that what naturally emerges is this beautiful generosity, wanting to be generous with our time, our resources, and particularly just generous with our attention. So I just returned from a really amazing and heartwarming trip to the Deep South. Was deeply touched by the generosity of many of the people who struggled mightily in during the 50s and 60s in the civil rights movement. And that it was their generosity that opened a whole new world of possibility for us. And so I would invite you to consider what is generosity in your practice? What does that look like for you? And so I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat and invite you to share your resources with keeping this cycle of generosity going. So thank you.
Great, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, it's really lovely to understand generosity as part of our life, that we give in so many different ways. And we often don't recognize how much has been given to us at the same time. And that's all part of the practice of generosity and the goodness of it and the beauty of it and the gift of it. And of course, thank you for your generosity here, your presence, your awareness. That also it's not just for oneself, but it's for everyone. So tonight, I would like to talk a little about the war in the Ukraine. And the name of the talk is called War and Peace. And it really came about because of a student here at SFI. She's somebody who was a student many years ago. She said she doesn't come so often these days, but she sent me a note and said she had a question. Would I give a talk or make a video about how to survive the assault of what she called frightening, agonizing thoughts day and night of the possibility of nuclear war and the dread and the powerlessness one experiences of the day-to-day horrible news of what is going on in Europe and nearby. And so I'd like for each of us to reflect a little bit about what happened to you, what happened for you when the war started. How did it impact you? How did it impact your life? How did it impact your heart or your mind or your thoughts or not, which it may not have, right? Or how did you feel towards Putin and Russia? And I know I taught right after the war started. I'm not sure I don't think I taught here, but I remember it was so strong, my reaction, because I found out right before I was going to go to sleep that the war had started, and I was just furious about it. And I didn't want to deal with it. And I was really angry. And really what I wanted was to go to sleep. So I went to bed and I went to sleep, and I woke up an hour later and I was like angry. And I realized, oh, I have to pay attention to what's actually happening here, right? In this body, heart, and mind. And so I started to practice and be mindful of that anger that was here. And very quickly I realized, oh, the anger was there. It was part of the response, but it was covering something that was more vulnerable, which is I felt helpless about the goddamn war starting. And that was harder for me to allow the helplessness of, I felt like there was nothing I could do to stop the war. And technically, that's true. I couldn't stop it. And I was really unhappy it happened. But I could be mindful of what was happening here and relax around it, both the anger and then the sense of helplessness, which is not a feeling I like to have. I don't like to feel helpless. And I've learned more and more about being helpless as I've gotten older, because it's part of what's true for us as human beings. We're not in control of reality. And we can do some things and it's great, and do everything you can that's helpful, but also learn to get comfortable with your own vulnerability, your own human vulnerability and helplessness. And so she wanted to know what to do. And of course, I'm asking you, like, how did it impact your life? I'm telling you the first impact for me. Or how did you feel towards Russia or towards Putin? Because I had very strong feelings about this person who I don't know in this country that I've never been to, and the same with the Ukraine, which I've never been to and have some more different ideas about, but I wasn't familiar with either, and I wasn't happy about being afraid of nuclear war. Are you afraid of that? Is that in your field of consciousness or not? Because depending, what I've found is depending on who one is and where one lives, people in Europe are much more concerned about nuclear war. And I teach a class on Wednesday that has a lot of people in Europe, and they're concerned about that. That's part of their world. And of course, they suffered World War II in a different way than we did. I mean, the only bombing in America in World War II was Pearl Harbor, right? But Europe was devastated by World War II. And so for them, it's a very real thing, war. So are you afraid of nuclear war? Do you believe it's possible? As this woman is concerned about, who wrote me this note. And of course, she was asking, what can I say to help, right? And so you might reflect about, what have you done to assuage your own concerns about a war, if you are concerned about it? Or how have you practiced since it happened? And she had written me a little more. She said she respected some of the guidance that I've given before about when things are difficult in the world, take a break from the news, right? Don't obsess with the news. And she said, so she was really trying to do that. And she was also trying to do her meditation several times a day to recenter and to continue her day so she can function sensibly, right? And so, and she said there, I'll read, she said, I'm sure many people are struggling in similar, ways and trying to lead their lives the best and to live a wholesome life. She said, can you offer comfort, perspective about our present world of suffering and the aggressive brinkmanship and the threat of widespread world war again? And so I said that she had suggested, had I talked to this group before, I said I hadn't, but I would. And so, she could come on, or she could hear the tape that'll be posted, right? But I want you all to reflect for yourself. How's it been for you? Has there been impact for you or not about the war? Do you have any anger, any fear, or, is it just not on your screen, the war? Are you just kind of continuing with your life, which many of us can do without having to really think about the war? And if you are impacted by the war, then how are you practicing with it, right? Or how are you practicing with it if you haven't been impacted and other people who you know and are friends with, or family or community, and they are impacted by the war? How do you practice with that, both individually and collectively? And what supports your staying centered, or what supports your sense of peacefulness even in the middle of a war? Because at a certain level of reality, what's true is the world is at war, right? Human beings are at war, and we're part of that human community where war is happening. And so my friend asked, what does Buddhism teach? And many of you know what Buddhism teaches, but I'll say it again: teaches awareness, compassion, And it also teaches that learning and understanding is key to freedom. It's not just awareness, right? One of my teachers, Sayadaw U Tejaniya, he wrote a book called Awareness is Not Enough. And it's a great title because I love awareness and I could talk about awareness forever. But he said a great thing. It's not enough. There's more. We need awareness, but we need kindness. We need compassion. We need to relax when we're aware of whatever it is, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong, or we like it or don't like it. Can we actually still stay centered here in a way where we open to it, but we're not bound by it? And of course, Buddhism teaches us to look at the causes and conditions of what's happening and why, and what's the big picture. And I really thought, when I thought about the war, here's what I came up with. This is a very Eugene kind of way of thinking. I thought, oh yeah, war is nationalistic narcissism. War is nationalistic narcissism. And that's, I mean, it makes me laugh. It's such a silly thought, but it's actually true. Just like we have individual narcissism, where we have people who think just that whatever they think, that's what we have to do, and that's what's right. Everybody else is wrong. And the same thing happens collectively. It's like my country, my group, my this, my that. That's what's right. And everything else is wrong. And so the way that we practice is by paying attention to our own narcissism, our own neurosis, right? Whatever we have about being so self-involved. And it doesn't mean self-involved doesn't mean we don't care about ourselves or love ourselves or really are concerned about what we're doing, but it means we take into account others as well, that the collective is important, just as we are important. And so we want to pay attention to waking up right here so we can wake up with others. The Buddha said, your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded. And once mastered, no one can help you as much as that mastered way of being aware, of really being able to be aware of ourselves so we're not just acting reactively. Right? He says, no one can help you as much, not even a beloved mother or father. And so the world is very small right now. It's totally small. I mean, not just that nationally, it's not changed in size, but digitally, everything is right here, like in almost a moment, in my experience. And it's not how I grew up, or it's not what the world was like when I was young, but it's different. But right now we hear what's happening almost everywhere so quickly, right? And so there's so much immediacy. And so we hear the suffering, the dukkha of the world immediately, and war is part of the dukkha. And the Buddha's teacher from the East Bay, Joanna Macy, said, when we open to the pain of the world, we discover our interconnectedness in the web of life. This is the gift of dark and dangerous times, to find again our mutual belonging. And so to really find not just ourselves, but our collectivity and the power of that, the goodness that can respond to the dark and dangerous times. And it's really the Sangha is what she's pointing at, as well as individually, that together we can respond as skillfully as possible to whatever has happened. And of course, as I said, part of what Buddhism is teaching us is to learn and understand. So I've been reflecting, thinking about Russia and what happened for them. And I knew, they'd been in World War II. I didn't realize they'd had the most dead in World War II were in Russia. 26 million people died in the Second World War, which is just an astounding amount of people. And of course, they were back then, Russia was the Soviet Union, and it had a different, what I would call dictator, which was Stalin. And they were part of this collective with the England and the United States and the West fighting the countries, right? But at the end of the war, then the countries divided, especially Soviet Union and the West, the United States, England, and then there was a Cold War. And then the Soviet state ended, right? And then this more nationalistic, even narcissism occurred with Russia. And, and it's so tragic that human beings have to divide in this way to pretend that they'll be safe or safer if they go up against the other instead of figure out how to live together. The Buddha said, in war, in battle, the winners and losers both lose. In battle, the winners and losers both lose. That there's a tragedy or loss to war, no matter which side you're on, nobody actually wins. The winning is that the war ends. Then everybody wins when the war ends. But the power that is sought, even when you win it, you get it for a while, doesn't do what power is, what's important for power to do, which is power is not a bad thing. We want to use our power in general, all our powers, to be creative, to be loving, to manifest a new and better world, right? We want to use all the power we can to do that, but not to do it by becoming the rulers of somebody else. That's not real power. Martin Luther King Jr., he said, power at its best is love. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands in the way of love. It's a beautiful Dharma from Martin Luther King Jr. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands in the way of love. And so I've been learning also, not just about Russia, but about Ukraine, which I don't know much about, learning a little bit. I've learned that it's had a long relationship with Russia, and that some of that relationship's been intermixed over time in history, right? So sometimes Ukraine has been part of Russia, sometimes not, some people are more Russian than Ukrainian in Ukraine. And my only knowing about the Ukraine is some of people from my culture, from the Jewish culture, came from the Ukraine. That's what I knew. And I knew there'd been a lot of anti-Semitism in the Ukraine, and that had been part of that world in its ignorance. And what was really wild for me to find out was that the president of the Ukraine is Jewish, which I didn't know. And that just seems so radical to me and really kind of wild, because it's not how I've ever thought about the Ukraine. And the fact that they now have a Jewish president points to how much human beings can let go of their ignorance and their bias and their prejudice and their racism, that it is let goable of, and that a different world can happen. And even that is a manifestation of it, in my opinion. And this is a funny little aside, but I also read, as I was researching the Ukraine, they make their own vodka, Dima's vodka. And there was a little thing about this vodka that the Ukrainians make, because it said the Ukrainians are earnest toastmasters, and they say budmor when they toast, right? Which is at the heart of Ukrainian celebrations. But it encompasses something far more than saying cheers. Budmor literally means let us be. Let us be. Right? And it's the most popular Ukrainian toast. And I love that toast, because that's what we're learning how to do here, is we're learning how to be, just to be, which is so hard for human beings, to just be. There's always so much more we want to be, or think we should be, or can be. And that may be true, and you can want to be more, but can you also just let yourself be right here, be the beautiful and what's called precious human birth, the beautiful aliveness that is sitting right in your seat, wherever you are in the world, or on the Zoom screen. So my friend Jack Cornfield, friend, teacher, Jack, he said, our first task is to make our heart a zone of peace. Instead of becoming entangled in the embattled bitterness or cynicism that exists externally, we need to begin to heal those qualities within ourselves. We have to face our own suffering, our own fear, and transform all of it into compassion. And that's our practice. That's what we're doing. We're learning how to wake up and be fully human, fully human. And of course, you find different kinds of humans. And we both have all kinds within us. There's a famous haiku from Isa, Japanese poet. He said, where there are humans, you will find flies and Buddhas. Where there are humans, you will find flies and Buddhas. You will find the good and the bad. You'll find it all right here. Can we practice with it? Can we be kind to it? Can we relax with both the good that's here, and can we relax with what's not good here? And somebody's not muted, so please make sure you're muted, so when you cough, we don't hear you. That would be a really kind thing to do. Thank you. And so part of what we can do as part of practice is, when things are difficult, when there's war happening, when we're concerned, where it's difficult, is really reflect on, oh, where can I find inspiration here in myself, or in my friends, or in my colleagues, or in my community, right? Or in my Sangha, right? Where's the inspiration that can help support me to stay present, centered, aware, awake, and kind right now, right? Or to look and see, what do I love? And is it anywhere around, right? Do I love the goodness of humans, or the joy of humans? You know, I go out in the park and I see humans who are very happy, and they're playing and they're enjoying the day. Or nature, just, you know, some of us love nature, and just to go out in nature and let it help us relax. You know, or how can you what helps you recenter yourself? Is it sitting, or exercise, or the arts, or nature? It's very normal when there's war to feel insecure about what's going to happen. And some of us might feel that way. That's just normal, right? And it's not just the war, but of course the media is also giving us the news, right, about the war. And you'll hear different versions of the news of the war, depending on which media you listen to. And sometimes the frenzy of the media will really help provoke our deeper fears. And of course, the truth is life is insecure and always has been, always will be. And when I think about my own fears, what I want to do is learn how to sit with them, relax with them, open to them, not be judgmental of myself or the fear either, but see that actually in this moment, like right now, everything is okay right here, that that's true. And that's where I can live from to deal with what's not okay in the world. So the need for practice is of supreme import to help us find some balance, to find equanimity, and to live our lives in a way where we really meet the truth of what's here individually, the truth of what's here collectively. Martin Buber, the Jewish writer, philosopher, he said, all real living is meeting. All real living is meeting. So the question that happens for a lot of us with the war is, what can we do? And of course, we can sit and offer our good wishes to those at war and those who are suffering and those who are afraid or those who are perpetrating the war. Offer our good wishes, not that they continue perpetrating the war, but that they wake up and become unattached from their ignorance so they can see that this is not a good thing to do, right? And of course, we can also volunteer or donate or protest or pray are all really helpful things to do. And so people have asked me about where to donate, and I've got 3 different places, which I'm going to put in the chat if you're interested. I've got to find the chat now. Wait, where's my chat? Here's the chat. I'm going to put 3 different. Let's see if I got it in there. Yeah. And you can look in the chat box and see it if you're interested. If that's something that interests you, it's Doctors Without Borders and Direct Relief and World Kitchen. And, we've done, Pam and I have donated to some of these to help with the war in the Ukraine. And to also remember that goodness is right here. Goodness is right here in your seat. And we can function from the goodness. Albert Camus said, we all carry within us places of exile, our crimes, ravages. Our task is not to unleash them on the world, it is to transform them in ourselves so we can respond to the world kindly and caringly. And even in the first, in the Psalms, number 23 says, it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. And as I hear that, what I understand it in a Buddhist way, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of the death, I fear no evil, because what's here, what's right here, and I'm pointing at myself, but really I'm pointing at each of you. Many of you I've known for so many years as practitioners and as friends or family. The goodness is right here. God is right here. The sacred is right here. The divine is right here. Consciousness is sacred, and it's alive for a short period of time. That is just amazing. And I think I'll end with this poem from John O'Donohue. Irish poet, philosopher. He said, as the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. It's a beautiful beginning. As the fever of day comes toward twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That we might see through the fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords might be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the holy mountain. It's a beautiful poem from John O'Donohue. So we have some time for any comments, questions about the war, about what I've said, about Buddhism and the diamond approach, not the diamond approach, Buddhism and how we practice with what's difficult. And it's great if you raise your hands virtually. I have a raised hand button at the bottom of my Zoom, as some people have it in, I don't know, somewhere else, and the reactions button. Any thoughts, feelings, reactions? And please, if you've never raised your hand and spoken, please do it anyways, even if you're shy, and of course, even if you have, then raise your hand also. Okay, Clint. Go ahead, you should be able to unmute yourself, Clint.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to say briefly, of course, like everybody else, I've been following the war over in Ukraine, and it's been horrified by the images there.
Mhm.
But another layer of, I don't know, nastiness or a problem is politicians in this country. Some of them still support Russia's, and they certainly did more so before this war. And so I just want to add that is another layer of confusion and ugliness, and it just compounds this problem a lot more than if it just was over in Europe or Russia.
Right.
That's all.
Well, it's great. Thank you, Clint, for what you're pointing at, because you're pointing at how small the world is, and we have an impact on the world. Our politicians have an impact on it because we have a lot of money and a lot of resources, and what we do with them. I mean, one of the things that interested me so much is how many tech companies have gotten involved in different ways in terms of denying certain things to Russia or withdrawing their resources, or it's not just nations anymore that have power. And so there's a whole new leveling, or I don't know if it's a leveling exactly, but there is a different terrain for war than there used to be. And so in terms of what to do, when there's something like what you're talking about, is of course, encourage whoever you support to be against the war and see what happens, and encourage the people who are for the war to wake up and stop war. So thank you. Lloyd.
Good evening, Eugene.
Hi, Lloyd.
Hi. So, as a father and a grandfather, it really it breaks my heart just I try not to watch too much of it, but the level of suffering it's just almost beyond my comprehension to see children and people, yeah, running for their lives and having the enemies or the opposing sides still shooting and purposely jeopardizing civilians. But I guess the thing that it's made me realize, or that I seem to be very aware of, is it is happening now in Ukraine. But you know, it was happening also in Syria, and it was happening in Iraq, and it was happening in Afghanistan. And maybe there weren't nuclear weapons, and maybe it wasn't Russia, but some of that was us. And you know, we were racking pain and suffering. I'm 74, so I grew up with Vietnam, and you know, I went to Vietnam and I saw. I mean, I went to Saigon, so I don't know what it was like in Hanoi, but I mean, that terrible suffering, it just seems to be something that is going on, and we can't seem to break out of it.
Well, it's a very slow maturation of the human species. And, you know, it's part of our animal nature, right? That animals do that, they're territorial and fight, but it's also not the end of our human nature, right? And so it's a slow evolution to wake up. And there is waking up happening, and it's true what you're saying. Of course, there are a lot of other wars in the world that I didn't mention and aren't in the foreground because for many reasons. One, they're not white, which this is a white war, and they're also they're not so threatening because they're not nuclear, right? Which this war has a possibility of becoming. Which, of course, personally, I can't even believe that anybody even would think that, but people do, and people who have those kind of power think that way. And so the question becomes, okay, it's important to see the horror and the tragedy and the heartbreak of it all that you're describing. And what can we do that's skillful, that supports the end of the war, or could support the end of the war? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Stephanie.
We have a 19-year-old grandson who has a dear friend who is Russian, whose grandfather was a high-level officer in the Soviet army. And Anton's grandpa says, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
So there are people in Russia who absolutely don't believe in this war. And we traveled on a wonderful trip to Russia a few years ago and met numerous, marvelous people, both in cities and way out in the countryside. And it's just hard to believe that they are going to suffer terrible privation because of what we are doing fiscally to the country. They don't deserve it. So my current practice is lots and lots of metta and karuna.
Yeah, great. That's great. And great that you bring that into the room, because of course, it's all humans. And it's like, and of course, there are so many good people everywhere. No matter what's happening, there's so many good people. And then the ignorance of human beings is a very slow change. right? That wars continue. And of course, yeah, the people of Russia will suffer from the economic war that's being waged on them now, as people are trying to get the Russian government to stop the physical war that they've begun in Ukraine. And I've even, yeah, I mean, even one of my a young friend of mine who's quite radical politically, he was trying to explain to me how it happened and what the United States did to help cause this war, right? Which, you know, I kind of got some of it, you know, the threat to that Russia feels that we might not even be aware of politically, but it's still, in my very simplistic understanding, everybody has to grow up, right? And war is not the answer to whatever the problem is. War is actually not the answer. And yet,
I was impressed by the women who were protesting in Moscow about what Putin's doing.
Oh, great. Haven't seen that. That's great to hear.
A lot of women were protesting, and I guess half of them got jailed, but they were protesting. It was beautiful.
Yeah, no, it is. There are people, and what's also interesting that you remind me of is how much the information highway is so important, because if people hear and really know what's happening, then they can protest. But if they're not getting accurate information, it's really hard. And this is where truth has become such an important part of politics, or the lack of truth, especially when you have narcissistic leaders really want to control the truth. And as you all know, Dharma means truth, right? That's the Dharma will set you free. The truth will set you free. Great. Thank you both for coming on and speaking to this. Anything else you want to add, or?
Yeah, these young men, these 19-year-olds, are discussing among themselves what they will do if they are called to serve in the military. I had not even thought of that.
Yeah. Makes sense to me, because I was a young man during the Vietnam War, and I was clear I wasn't going to go, right? And I figured out how to get out. You know, I remember going when I was called, because you were called to go register for the draft, and I remember having a physical and everything, and I had my ways that I was getting out, and I had papers that got me out, and I had to give them the papers, but I also had to keep a set of the papers in my socks in case they lost the papers that I was giving them to get out of the draft. And, you know, because, yeah. And so I hope the young men do that. And because we want to stop the war in whatever ways we can. Right. Thank you. Who else? Roseanne. Can't quite see you, Roseanne. Okay, there you are. I'm going to go back to speaker view. Please unmute yourself.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm not used to being on, participating.
That's okay. Great to have you in the room.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to add that this whole situation is bringing up lots of pointing out the failure of the United Nations And not many people really mention the United Nations, but the United Nations was formed after World War II to prevent the scourge of war. That was one of the main goals of the United Nations. Of course, it has failed over and over again because of the way it's set up. It's not able to stop war. But I think it's worth mentioning, that we do have this international organization whose purpose is to solve the problems between nations and to prevent war, and that people need to recognize that and put energy into it, because it's the only thing that we have. There is international law and criminal court. They don't work very well because they can be ignored. But, it's what we have. So I just like to put that part into the conversation.
Sure. So there's something you see that could be helpful, and you want us all know that that's there and could be useful and skillful. And that's what it's for. Great.
Yeah, I think we need to acknowledge the importance of that international organization and that international law, which Russia is obviously violating right now. But we have also violated it in the past.
Yep.
The United States has.
Yeah. And most countries have who have started wars or, began wars. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's, you're pointing again at the youngness of the human species and how immature it is, because it tries, right? Like setting up the United Nations, which makes total sense. And it's helped at times, definitely in different places, but it's a slow evolution to maturity. Okay, thank you. Okay, Jonathan.
Hi, Eugene.
Hi, Jonathan.
So I've been sitting with some reactivity about, a lot of reactivity around the whole situation, and just tonight around the use of the war as opposed to this invasion or attack on Ukraine. So there's a way that the way you've been using that terminology, and I know it's semantics, it certainly is, semantics, and yet I think some of what has been so upsetting and angering for me is this sense of an unprovoked attack on a sovereign nation. And it makes me so angry and also helpless. There's nothing I can do. And a lot of fear. I was reading an article yesterday. I had not appreciated the fact that our country actually would not necessarily be able to thwart a Russian nuclear attack on the US. And that was very chilling to learn, that sort of this relative sense of safety or security I've had, that we're safe from some sort of devastating attack, isn't the case. And I see where my mind goes with that, and the fact that Putin is maybe in a very desperate situation where he has nothing to lose. And it just brought up this sense of, wow, at any moment, we could, of course, we could always die at any moment, but it really landed in a way of there could be an existential threat for the world in any moment at this point. And some of that is fear talking, and some of it is we don't know. We don't know what happened here.
No, it's true. We don't. And I want to go back to a couple things. So you don't like the word war because to you, it's just an unprovoked attack, period, an invasion of a sovereign country. And that is my understanding also. but the fact that the nation is fighting back and trying to makes it a war, in my understanding. So that's, I'm just semantically defending myself, and
Yes.
and and the other, and then the second piece you're bringing up, which is really humbling for all of us, which is seeing we think we're safe. And, I mean, we may be safe on the deepest spiritual level, but physically anything could happen. But not only are we not safe, the Russians are not safe, right? Because if it goes both ways.
Yeah.
And if there's a nuclear war, it's a little bit hell on earth, right?
Yeah.
And that's possible, and it could happen. And that's why praying is also very important. May Putin wake up in whatever way he needs to not start a nuclear war, because it's not winnable. Of course, that's the other piece, right? As the Buddha said, everybody loses. The winners and the losers both lose, right? I think you're frozen now, Jonathan, at least on my screen. Oh, there
I'm
you
back.
go. You're back. You're better. Okay. Anyhow, so how did you get in there, Lloyd? No, I've lost Jonathan.
No, I'm here.
Okay, there you are. Great. So, yeah. Anything else? But I'm happy you're adding to the conversation about it, because, the most interesting thing so far for me about all of this conversation is mostly the older people have spoken up. Right. And you're not quite older yet. You're getting there, but you're not quite there. But it was, people like me who are older has spoken up. And then, I haven't seen any of the younger people speak up. And so I don't know if it's different for them. And so, okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
There's
Eugene.
one more hand up. Great. Tomas.
Hi, Eugene.
Hi.
I was listening to a podcast on Thursday from Jacobin. Jacobin is a American leftist, socialist, sort of a Marxist magazine, and they have a podcast. And they were interviewing like some professors and government or think tank people from Europe. And what they were saying was that it had been a real mistake to have NATO expand into Poland, Romania, and give Ukraine the idea that they might join NATO because it threatened
Russia.
And I was really fascinated to hear that, because I hadn't heard that in the mainstream media. That's all I wanted to add.
Okay, good. Thank you for adding that. Very important. That I have heard that, and I totally get it. It's still this, everybody's looking to defend their turf, right? And if you have more turf, you got to you're stronger or something. I've been watching a little bit the new version of West Side Story, so I'm a little bit into gangs and turf, and it's the West gang against the East gang, right? And and both of them are afraid of each other. Right? So thanks for bringing that into the room. Okay, Ross.
Hi, Eugene.
Hi, Ross.
I think you started the talk by asking, about the, what feelings this brought up for us and all this. And I feel, I didn't feel anger. I felt a certain helplessness, and I feel like constant distraction. I have, my daughter lived in Ukraine for a couple of years, and we have friends. And so we're, constantly aware of them. And I wondered, if there is some comparison to be made or some thinking to be done around meditation and around the awareness of thinking that you were talking about while we were sitting this evening, like, how we can go about our business in a semi-regular way at the same time that there's these thoughts are constantly entering.
Right. So one thing to do is to really learn how to be aware of thoughts, because the thoughts are happening on their own most of the time. Most of the time, we're not saying, okay, I want to sit down and think about Ukraine for the next hour. I want to read, me personally, I want to read the headlines. I want to see what's happening, and I want to reflect on it. And then I don't want to think about it. But that doesn't mean my mind doesn't continue thinking about it. So I want to be aware of it and start to rest in the awareness that is not the thought. The awareness is aware of the thought. The awareness is not cathected to what it's aware of. The awareness is not bound or identified with what it's aware of. We get identified. But the awareness just knows thought and sound and smell and taste and touch and, sensation. It's aware of things. And so that's why we practice, is to begin to relax back. One of my friends say, oh yeah, sit back and be aware of it all. Because the awareness is aware of it all. So that becomes part of your practice. And then two other things I'll say. The other piece is, that's why mindfulness of breath and one simple object also, if you focus on it and become one with the breath, then the thoughts fade to the background. And you don't have to worry about the thoughts or think about the thoughts. You stay close to the breathing. And then, of course, the same other piece is, if you're really having a lot of thoughts, do a lot of loving kindness practice, metta practice. First of all, for yourself, because it's suffering to have to be identified with thought all the time. That's a personal kind of suffering. And we want to let go of it. So be kind, do metta for yourself, and then do metta for your friends in the Ukraine, and then for all the people in the Ukraine, and then for the people of Russia, and even do metta for Putin, because he's suffering. Otherwise, he wouldn't act like this. And so the metta can also be a way to let go of all of it and to offer our best.
Right. And as I understand now that letting go is the best exercise that we can, the best gift we can give from this distance.
Yeah, well, it's definitely one of the best gifts we can give to ourselves. And then from there, we can respond skillfully to give more gifts to the world.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to stop here, and we'll do a little sharing of merit to end our time. Appreciating everybody's participation, the goodness of being here together in Sangha, and offering our good wishes. May the benefit of our meditation go out and go out towards ourselves, and go out towards the people of the world, and specifically the people who are suffering from violence and war and the ignorance of war, whether it be in the Ukraine or in Somalia or in Syria, or wherever people are acting out of this kind of ignorance. May the goodness of our practice go out in every direction, touching beings in every world and every realm. May all beings be happy and peaceful. May all beings be free from suffering, free from the dukkha of anger, hatred, fear, violence, war, attack. May all beings wake up. May we wake up together. May we realize our true nature, our Buddha nature, the nature of peace, love, compassion, and letting go, letting ourselves be. May all beings be free. Thank you, everybody. Good to be here with you all. Bye, everybody. Anne and Erica and Josh and Michael and Kitty and Fiona and Jonathan and Patricia. Hi, Patricia. And Fahad and Terrence and Barbara and Anne and Jerry and Linda and Benjamin. People who don't even see their pictures. Seema. Bye.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
I'll see you in 3 weeks.
Very helpful.
Everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night, Lola Bola. Good night, Lola Bola.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye, Lola.
Thanks, Eugene. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Bye.
Hi. Hi. Bye. Bye, Allison. Bye, Johnny. Okay.
Thank you for listening. To learn how you can support the teachers and Dharma Seed, please visit dharmaseed.org/donate.